Returning to the point of why democratic systems can be better than despotic ones is because democratic systems are set up to have a very wide pool of talent, which is to say, no, just because you're born into an aristocratic family or born into a moneyed family or born into some type of Mandarin family. And again, Mandarin families is something we need to understand more in modern times because we're run by Mandarins. These are people belonging to the legal professions, accounting professions, administrative professions. So families that have been in politics for years, that's a Mandarin family. Big accounting firms working for people like that, Mandarins. Lawmakers, Mandarins. More or less, as far as the accounting goes, these are the, you could say, laundering side of the equation. And so, why were democratic systems, especially the modern iteration of it? Now, if you go back to Greece, it's not really comparable. The heyday of Athens, we're talking about 10,000 people. But again, what technology did they have? Didn't have a lot of technology. They didn't have the ability to communicate on a mass scale like we do today. So, returning to modern democracy, don't be sentimental about it. There's nothing inherently morally better about democracy. What democracy needs to deliver is good leadership. That's the whole point. The argument is that democratic systems provide better leadership more consistently, or at least not terrible leadership, more consistently than the competing models. If someone were to come up with a better model, people would go with that if you could make a convincing argument. But of course, because democracies in our modern times have become so degraded because they've been attacked by so many different vectors, and there hasn't been an ability to reform these institutions, now it's got a bad rap. It's got a bad brand. It's like the shoe factory that was producing great shoes now produces alligators that fall apart, Crocs, right? that fall apart one day after we're walking on them, and you develop sores on your feet due to like chemical burns. And then everyone says, oh, shoe factory, shoe factory, shoe factory. Well, it's not just the shoe factory, it's how it's managed. So we have to also go back to the 18th century when democratic institutions were really revolutionary. You had an emerging industrial class, you had engineers, you had scientists, you had very capable people in local communities that were more or less moral and not totally all in on materialism and nihilism like we have today. We did not have these global financial bodies just roaming around the globe, injecting illicitly derived funds into legal and essential businesses. We didn't have that going on. That was science fiction at the time. Now it's prevalent. So what does it need to do? Well, just like in different prototypes. So let's consider our current democracy like the Model T Ford. The principles were right. The execution was the best that they could have done at the time, but it needs upgrading. In a lot of ways, it needs simplifying. needs to return to basic principles. Now, the basic principle is, again, the essential principle is producing a governmental system that is consistently producing high-grade leadership. And leadership is a quantity that is needed, is something ephemeral. It's hard to grasp it. Capable leadership oftentimes does not prove itself capable until there's some type of major crisis. And then it's a competition of leadership. You've got the authoritarians and despots on one side that have advantages and disadvantages, but a lot of their disadvantages have to do with poor quality of leadership because they create a yes men and woman culture. And so they don't get the feedback and they end up losing their minds. They end up taking on projects they can't possibly manage well because it's all about them, creating a cult of personality. So they stymie their societies. They turn their whole countries into funnels for them and their very close circle of yes people. So that's the argument for a democracy and against authoritarianism. Now, that argument only holds up as long as we're able to reform these electoral processes and that we can get rid of the Mandaриnism that has taken root. Now, what is the cause of the major decline in leadership of ostensibly democratically elected leadership? Well, it has to do with the voting system, has to do with the security of the candidates, it has to do with the vetting of the candidates, and it has to do with the damn financial and economic system in these damn countries where, for example, in the UK, you've got 171 billionaires who are above the law. They absolutely are. So how the hell did they get the money, and how do we go forward without them? Or anything like them, including also financial institutions. So we had a governmental model that didn't really address the economic side of things. So we've had a gigantic blind spot, and all of that social capital that our ancestors built up, all of our cultural capital, everything like that, that's the fumes that this financial system really runs on. But as far as leadership goes, they're dead set against reform. Dead set against it. They don't. That's not the reform they want, right? Being made equally invaluable or valuable, depending on how you want to say it. They don't like that. They like having a leg up over everyone else and lording it over them. They're much worse than aristocrats because they're also invisible. They don't defend their wealth. They have proxies show up, proxy armies show up to defend themselves. They have lobbying groups. They have international mercenary companies at their disposal. Little green men, just in different colors. They have a great working relationship with the criminal classes. They're in their businesses or came from those businesses. People would think, oh, that's beyond belief. Well, you don't know who they are. How about this? There's that number. But their names aren't being plastered on the front pages of the media companies they own. So here's another thing they did, is they subverted the free press. So now that is something that George Washington would have recognized. But at the time, it wasn't really a problem, and so it wasn't addressed. It did become a problem, and it wasn't addressed. And why wasn't it addressed? Because they applied their armies of wealth to make sure that that update to the prototype didn't happen. But okay, that's a historical tragedy that will or should be described in the history books, and there should also be connections made between the people and responsible parties. But we're not there yet. We have a captured financial and economic system, and that has led to a captured political system. How do you know your political system is captured? Because of the Mandaриnism on the political level. You have political hacks. They're not competent. They're not coming up consistently with good leadership. Good leadership is reflected in a multitude of different things. Let's look at a different related industry. Let's look at the railroads, trains, train travel. How well are they running? Are they running on time? Do you have statistical information you can shift through? So in 1995, it was running at 90% on time, and today it's running 60% on time. That's the Mandaриnism at work. That is a clear-cut sign of bad leadership. And the same can be applied to the political side of things. Political side of things, demystify that word. It's leadership. That's it. So let's say there's peaceful people to the south. All of a sudden, they get taken over by some international global despotic gang and start mass producing weapons. Good leadership on your side means preparing for an inevitable conflict, because you have people that are taking crazy pills in your vicinity. To not do that is to be bad leadership, which would lead to them overestimating their abilities and then attempting some type of mass violent act. Why wouldn't they? They're not being deterred effectively. We can take this border, there's nothing here. There's not even a fence that works. They haven't even done that. Who are these people? Why should they be ruling the land that we could rule better than them? And so it reverts to this level of primitivism, because these are worldly type people that take these worldly type of things into account, into their decision-making processes. Now, on the other hand, if you display good leadership, like all of a sudden, overnight, or within a month, there's fortifications that look pretty intimidating, and a crack bunch of people that are keeping an eye on the situation, you're going to think twice, like, why don't I go on vacation instead? If you're the supreme leader, why are you going to start something you can't finish? You're not. A lot of these dictators are crazy, but they're not that crazy. But if they can degrade the leadership on the other side of the fence so that it doesn't happen, then it's just, you're talking about a combined arms type of operation, yet in the socio-economic and political fields. So are they too dense that they wouldn't have attempted that by now? Of course not. They're doing it. They've done it to the point that they think they can take over the entire world at this point. And how did they get that access? Because they entered the hog pen at the top of our captured economic system. Because they were throwing grain around at the hogs at the top thought that they had reinvented rocket science. Because just winning, just the numbers blew up in their faces. They just started counting numbers, started seeing diamonds in the sky. That's not good leadership. They exploited the spiritual deficit of economic actors. their saleability, their sell-out ability. Economic actors have a price. That's why they're in economics. They're over-focused on that. And so they get rooked on that. Here you go, dummy. Here's $1 billion, and I'm going to take over your damn country. And that's really nothing in comparison to freedom or culture that is exceptional. Culture of exceptional leadership. And this is really a tragedy that the United States set off on that journey to be a country of exceptional leadership, and now it's a country that is known for exceptional socio-economic and political decline. So how did that happen? Well, you do need to start doing biopsies. Do need to start looking more critically. Do need to stop taking propaganda so seriously. Yeah, we're the best people on earth. We got a lot to get rid of, a lot to dump. How about this? This is another idea. All law written after 1912, just cancel it. Just with one stroke of the pen, put it out of action. Say, no, all law after 1910 is under review for an indefinite amount of time. And then as far as the banking goes, that needs to be shifted to the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department needs to become what it was intended to be. And there's no private central banks, period. And then as far as identifying, you have to identify manderism. So that's the three classes. Families known for political manderism, which means multi-generational. There's no reason in the world that should be true. Then anyone associated with the legal profession, anyone associated with lobbying, anyone associated with the accounting profession over a certain degree. Okay, you're a local accountant, you're a regional accountant, fine. But these global accounting operations are absolute pure mannerism. And again, as far as taxes go, guess what the U.S. did when they first started out? Their only tax was on imported goods. That was it. No income tax, no nothing. So as far as all these damn taxes, we could just start at zero and just work our way back up. How about that? So there's a whole lot of things that aren't even being put on the table by the mandarins of our day, and certainly upgrading democratic prototypes is not high on their agenda. In fact, it's something they consider to be threatening to their business model, and rightfully so. And yet it should be threatened, because their bad leadership is not going to be getting any better with these types of preconditions. So I don't even consider it democracy, because at some point they stopped, shut down or corrupted or subverted the leadership process to such a degree that all of these bad things are just so manifest, they're so easy to spot, and yet they're not being managed effectively. That's not the future. Any barbaric society, that could be any barbaric society. Don't call it democracy. Don't call it that. I call it mandarism. It is mandarism. And so now it's like, how do they showboat themselves to be better than the other despots? Well, it's really hard. Or they haven't completely destroyed the social fabric of some parts of the world and the country, and so they're still using that as some form of credibility, but it's dramatically falling as we speak. So it really is a race to the bottom in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, again, we could be all vinegar, we could be all criticism, we could be all doom and gloom. But on the other hand, these things are easy to change. It is very easy to update the prototype. It just requires some radical changes. But it doesn't require a jettisoning the original idea, which was let's create a governmental system that creates better leadership consistently over time and allows that process of bringing in new leadership, retaining good leadership, and also getting rid of bad leadership, and also screening, not letting a lot of bad leadership in the first place, because we're able to identify manderism. See, we just update our virus program to include manderism, and then all of a sudden all those problems with the blue screen of death and the email not working and security concerns all over the place, all those loopholes get closed. Now, of course, the first big upgrade, it's going to be great. It's going to probably take care of 80% of the problems, but you're still going to have to continually refine the process as problems arise. That is ultimately what leadership does. A good leader, a good captain of a ship, anything can happen on that ship. Anything does happen on ships, but a good captain will make the best decisions under the circumstances, if not every time, most of the time. And you can compare. Of course, you can get lucky, you can also get unlucky. But you're dealing with on average, above average, supernormal, qualified, not just qualified, but capable. How about that? Supernormal capability. Which also has a spiritual aspect. All these materialists, no, the rich people prove that they're good because look at how much money they have. That's a complete fallacy. Riches speak for greed. Greed is a defilement. It's like saying these people have, you could almost say 100% of them have a dirty diaper of defilement on them called greed. That's the only thing that riches really prove. Now, of course, it can just be that someone did something very valuable and good for society as a whole, and because they're good managers and good resource allocators, that they did provide a service that was worth what people paid for it, and they just got rich because of that. It's possible but let's just put it this way. In this day and age, those people are the exception. They're rare. They're also called nouveau riche. It doesn't make them automatically good leaders. A lot of them don't come out better. Well, the richer they get worse. Their egos get inflated. They start taking riskier bets. They end up penniless, broke, and broken at the end of their lives. So riches is really not the indicator. But there are a lot of other different socio-psychological, moral factors that are much better indicators than riches. Riches are an indicator, actually, that the person is not cut out for political office. Because it does show priorities. It shows certain predilections. Predilection to selling out. Well, what if the Persian showed up with a bar of gold? Are you going to change your political tune, yes or no? Because that's exactly what happened in Greek democracy. There's many different cases of Persians bribing Greek politicians. So that is the downside of democracy. You're opening it up to everyone, but that also means you're opening it up to a certain amount of vulgarity. So you have to be able to get rid of the vulgarity or contain it, or if you identify it, eliminate the people who are spreading the vulgarity or have become a conduit for vulgarity. Problem is that these people, they turbo boost themselves by being immoral, by taking the bribes. They can start building up people that are associated with them, associated with their franchise, until it becomes harder to dislodge them. And they have a reason for wanting it. It's a way of cheating. It's like doping yourself up to win an athletic contest. Like, I'm not just a great leader, I'm rich too, so now I'm popular. And so all that can seem very convincing, but it's very decadent, and it definitely is not the culture that leads to good leadership. So narcissism, no. The narcissism should also be something. Here's this dude, everybody's clapping for him. There's the band's out, beating the band, and have a parade for him. It doesn't have. He's on TV. Everyone, oh look, here can I have? This goes to people's heads, and they can't manage it properly. So that's another aspect. But again, you have a free press, and a free press also means not just the attacking. You're gonna have, if you allow free press, because we see how these despots who have access to our economies now, in a big way, like how they throw their money around and make sure that they get their vinegar-esque yes people in positions where they criticize the wrong people for the wrong reasons, and at the same time deflect from the right people for the right reasons. 171 billionaires. Every last one of them should have, there should be a 24-hour deposition where they're put on camera and asked about their financial operations, and that it's all documented, every single last one of them. There should be just like a year taken for this problem, because it certainly does deserve the attention. And because it's the UK, you could put them all on one single solitary double-decker loony bus. Maybe you could do like a COVID-19 Chinese variant and just like weld them in. It's like a sort of like a metal loony bus, and it just keeps driving around the UK as like a symbol for years and years and years that wealth is not worth the country. Certainly not the wealth that they misappropriated. And misappropriate and then applied to a political system that is defunct. It's just full of mandarins, just insulting everybody's intelligence for now going on decades, becoming a front for international money laundering. But let's keep the class distinctions. Let's make sure these people talk like they belong to a certain class because their money bought their ticket, their golden ticket in, and now they're going to lecture us about mandarism. They're going to just do the public relations and clownishly enough so that nothing is done to challenge this completely ill-gotten, hair-brained, bird-brained scheme of theirs and their buddies. We're going to win the money game. Who cares who's running the country? It's all about the money. We'll fly here, we'll fly there, let's just dump the sewage. Doesn't really matter. And if somebody gets out of line, like a big mouth, then let's just get rid of them. Let's pass a law. Let's criminalize speech. Let's make sure, throw the brakes on any type of upgrade. Keep everything real old and moldy and stupid, debased and bribed. Because 171 people really do like living like deranged Roman emperors of old that have zero public accountability. They really like that deal. But if it's good for the country, you ask that question. Well, no, it's not. We got 171 crazy people running around with $1 billion or more. That should that should be alarmist in the extreme. There should be a special fire brigade. That there should just be a bell ringing like ding 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 the whole day. We got 171 lunatics applying financial terrorism to important and vital national sectors. Ding, 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 ding. This alarm does not get turned off until the situation is remedied, till we got firewalls in place and an updated virus program.